All right, our first hypothesis for a study actually has to do with the main effect of LOP on performance in memory tasks. So what we're doing actually is we're saying that LOP will have a main effect on memory task, and that overall, ignoring these levels, basically, overall, all participants in the deep LOP condition will have better recall than individuals in the shallow LOP condition. So basically what that means, it's that more participants will recall more words here than in here. Again, we're not trying to understand, we're trying to ascertain what's in here. We're sort of ignoring these levels. So the best way you can think about it is that we're doing this and this. That's it. And we're saying that this overall will be better than this overall. That is a main effect. Now that we're talking about main effects, is there something missing? Do you think there's something missing? I mean, if we can do it this way, should it be another main effect that we could measure? What do you think? Of course, there is another main effect that we can measure, and it is right here. We can measure this main effect too, right here. This, ignoring these levels, so be only memory task performance. Problem is, we're not doing that. Why do you think that is? And then also, knowing how these are, or at least how people perform when they're doing these, ignoring this information, how would you think they will perform? Will be that people in the explicit condition will do better than the implicit condition? Or, you know, I would say due to your experience as a student, you will know that people in the implicit condition will probably do better than the explicit, possibly. Remember, this one is sort of about like you get clues that kind of help in recall, whereas this one, you have to actually purposefully recall things. But for this experiment, we're not doing this. We're only doing this main effect right here. In that, again, in that individuals in the deep deep encoding condition will actually do better than individuals in the shallow condition. And this is a main effect. Okay, so now we're going to talk about hypothesis 2. This one is a slightly more confusing, or you could say maybe not confusing, but a little bit more involved. So, what we're going to talk about is we predict certain things depending on LOP, the effect it will have on the memory task. So, remember, this will have an effect on this differently depending on which level of the memory task. That's what we're talking about dissociation. That's what we've been spending so much time talking about dissociations and what they mean. So, what we believe is going to happen is that LOP will have a stronger effect, or rather, LOP will affect performance in explicit recall tasks more. So, you could say that as far as explicit tasks go, it will be like this. This will be the most, so we can call it 1, i.e. the most recall. So the lower the number, the more recall. Let's do it that way. And then on explicit, still, LOP on explicit will be, let's call it 2. As in, this is the strongest effect, this one is a little less stronger, and that's what we're going with this first part. Now, additionally, LOP will affect performance in implicit memory task a little less. So that means that we could say when it comes down to implicit deep, we could call this one 3, which means it'll be strong, but it will not be as strong as this one, so it'll be a little smaller, let's say. But there's still an effect, kind of an effect. And then finally, implicit and shallow task, we can call this one 4, as in there won't be that much of an effect at all. So, again, LOP will have an effect on memory tasks depending on which level of said memory task. In this case, when you do the combinations, LOP In the deep condition, explicit, you will have the best recall. This is the best recall, i.e. people will recall the most words here. Then on LOP shallow and explicit recall task, you could say this is second best as far as an amount of recall words. Finally, when it comes down to implicit memory task, deep will have some effect, somewhat of an effect. And then finally, shallow, when implicit memory task, will be the worst recall, i.e. individuals will recall the least amount of words in this condition compared to this condition. So remember, the lower the number, the better a recall. So best, kind of okay, a little bit less good, or well, yeah, good, and then totally worst. Now, finally, another thing is, however, this is you could think about it as the second part of hypothesis too. However, this effect that LOP will have on memory tasks will be stronger over here on it'll be stronger on explicit recall tasks than in implicit. So we can do it like this, plus minus, i.e. LOP effect will be stronger. Again, the LOP effects will be stronger on explicit tasks compared to implicit tasks. That's what we believe is going to happen. If we were to try to, you could say almost a graph hypothesis to, it'll be something more or less kind of like this. It'll be sort of an interaction. So we got this in here. So for the x-axis, we got the LOP, so deep, and then shallow. And then for the y-axis will be the words, number of words recall. All right, so then we can actually use this here. As far as, let's use explicit, let's do it in red. So explicit is red. And of course, implicit tasks is, memory task is green. So what we believe is going to happen is when you have, when your participant was in the LOP encoding condition, they will, and they're on the explicit memory task, they will do the best. They will recall the most words. Most. Then, when they're an explicit task again, and they're actually in the shallow condition of LOP, they will recall less words. Let's do it like this, right here. Sorry. Then, when we have the participant and he's on the implicit condition, but in the deep LOP condition, they will recall, you could say less words right here. And then, when they're in the implicit recall condition and the shallow LOP condition, they will recall the least amount of words. So it'll be like this. So in the end, that ends up giving you, that ends up giving you this kind of interaction. As you can see, that's what more or less, this is more or less what we expect our results to look like once we graph them. I will let you know about the results on next class, but this is more or less what we expect to happen if we were to actually graph the amount of words recall by LOP depending on recall condition. Let's put this here. Or memory task. Recall condition or memory task goes up here. Explicit versus implicit, deep or shallow. So I hope this series of very quick, short videos helped in understanding the more complicated part of experiment 3. Otherwise, I will see you next class period and I will answer any and all questions that you have about this.